This is for all the people that swallowed Donald Trump's bullshit line about having the Affordable Care Act repealed and replaced with something quote unquote better, something great, something that was going to cover everybody. I repeat, everybody. Well, the details are now out on the American Health Care Act, which is the Republican plan that they are trying to ramrod through the House and hopefully on their part get enough senators on board to get this thing pushed through. Now, they are going around the block or around the normal procedures in order to do this. Why do I say that? Because the House of Representatives is in charge of appropriations, i.e. the purse strings, i.e. any monies that are spent by the U.S. government. And in order for there not to be a complete new act or bill, they have to frame this in the form of a change in appropriations. In that way, all they need to get in Congress are a majority of votes in the House of Representatives, and then it goes to the Senate where it only needs 50 votes in order to have the changes put into place. Now, you would say, nah, they would need 60. No, it does not go actually into the Senate as a formalized bill. It goes into the Senate as a reconciliation. If it goes in that way, the rules of normal Senate approval for a new bill do not apply. So they're trying to sneak this bill in through the back door. Now, they have held all kinds of hearings. I take that back. They've held all kinds of meetings where they have their committees review this particular bill and just rush it through. Now, you're going to hear about, I guess, an overnight meeting that they had to get this bill through one committee. Various other committees have had meetings. They are rushing this through at breakneck speed, okay? The Affordable Care Act, from start to finish, took approximately 6 months in order to make its way to the actual voting and passage by both the House and the Senate. This thing doesn't look like it's going to take even 6 weeks, okay? There have been no actual hearings with witnesses either for or against. There's been no public commentary. There's been no nothing. This thing is so bad that you have even Tea Party guys like Steve King, who hates the Affordable Care Act. He's made comments about the speed of which this is going through. You got guys like Tom Cotton out of Arkansas. Yeah, Arkansas. He's upset about the speed of this thing going through. I mean, this is just basically getting ridiculous as far as what's going on here. And this is what happens when you let the Republicans get full control of government. Now, I'm going to play this section from the Chris Hayes show, and you can see for yourself. There's even one House of Representative member who is not a Tea Party guy, he's a conservative, but even he is dancing around this because he knows that it's wrong, but he can't just go on camera and admit that they are basically screwing everybody. And in particular, they're screwing their own constituents, because if they have their way, there's going to be a whole lot of people that are going to be without health care. Anyway, here's the clip.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Republicans today continued their shock and awe strategy to slam Trumpcare through Congress. And today, despite massive pushback, the approach is getting results for now.
This is the closest we will ever get to repealing and replacing Obamacare. The time is here. The time is now. This is the moment. And this is the closest this will ever happen.
When Paul Ryan says the time is now, he is not kidding. Trumpcare proponents are rushing headlong to pass the bill through Congress at an unprecedented pace, prompting objections even from many Republicans, among them Senator Tom Cotton, who tweeted today, quote, "To my friends in House, pause, start over, get it right, don't get it fast."
Senator McConnell and every other senator is well aware of where I stand, and frankly where many Republican senators stand, who are troubled by the breakneck pace at which the House is operating and the fact that this bill as written today simply would not pass the Senate.
In 2009, the passage of Obamacare took more than a year, a time frame that was far too fast for Republicans who complained the law was being, as they like to say, jammed down their throats.
We're being told we must rush to pass this legislation.
We need to slow down and get it right. Like Mom used to say, you rush and you make mistakes.
I have never seen greater evidence that Washington, D.C. is out of touch with the American people than the fact that Democrats are going to continue in their headlong rush to pass a government takeover of health care.
That was in November. Now, House Republicans say they'll pass their bill in the next few weeks. Today, just 3 days after introducing the bill, they passed it through a pair of committees on party line votes after a pair of all-night sessions, moving forward despite the fact the Congressional Budget Office has yet to score the plan. So we do not know, nor have an estimate, of how much it will cost or, crucially, how many millions of Americans will lose their health care. Today, the Brookings Institution said the CBO will likely estimate that at least 15 million people will lose coverage if Trumpcare passes. The White House is already playing the estimate down.
The irony of the score is that the CBO was way off the last time. If you're looking to the CBO for accuracy, you're looking in the wrong place.
The reason Trumpcare proponents are moving so quickly is simple. With each and every day that passes, the list of people and institutions opposed to their bill, which already includes the AARP, every Democrat on the record, and many congressional Republicans, gets even longer.
Look, no one likes this bill. Hospitals, doctors, governors, conservatives, liberals, nonpartisan groups, and most of all, the people who will no longer have affordable health care.
This graphic shows just some of the nonpartisan groups that have come out against the bill. In a remarkable move, the chief medical officer for Medicaid has come out against it as well. Andre Ostrowski tweeting, "Despite political messaging from others at HHS, I align with the experts from the American Academy of Family Physicians, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the American Medical Association in opposition to the American Health Care Act." Some huge insurers also skeptical of the GOP's Obamacare replacement, objecting to two critical components, the tax credit structure and changes to Medicaid expansion funding. Today, House Speaker Paul Ryan used a PowerPoint presentation in an attempt to win over the skeptics, again pushing the false claim, one central to making the case for a piece of legislation that few seem to like, that Obamacare is collapsing.
This law is in the middle of a collapse, and people are quickly losing their choices. Here is what is happening under a law that is collapsing. It's not working, and that's why it's in a death spiral. It's a death spiral. It's collapsing.
Now, more on that death spiral claim and its dubious provenance later in the show.
Let me give it to you right now. The reason that Paul Ryan keeps saying death spiral and collapsing is because he is quoting the chairman of the board of Aetna insurance company, who is the number one health insurer in the country. That particular person had a hard-on for the government, okay? Why? Because Aetna wanted to merge with the third largest insurer in America, and that merger was shot down. So he was being proactive in that statement when he said that Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, is in a debt spiral. He was doing that in order to try to create leverage in order for the government to allow the merger. But it was a lie. It is a lie. And other major insurance companies have basically come out and disputed exactly what he said. Now, I probably will add the particular clip regarding, quote unquote, the death spiral of the Affordable Care Act. But I just wanted to let you know that what Paul Ryan is quoting is basically from an insurer that had a particular agenda that he wanted to try to push in order to get a merger accomplished.
And as for President Trump, he's also in what the White House calls full sell mode on the bill, meeting today with key members of Congress to talk budget and health care. He tweeted this afternoon, quote, "Despite what you hear in the press, health care is coming along great. We are talking to many groups, and it will end in a beautiful picture."
Yeah, right.
Joining me now, Republican Congressman Steve King of Iowa. And Congress...
All right, there's Steve King. Now, he's a Tea Party guy, and as I stated earlier, if he could get rid of the Affordable Care Act tomorrow, he would go to his grave happy. That's how much he hates the Affordable Care Act. But even he does not want to see this thing pushed through. And he is woefully ignorant on the number of people in his own district that will be affected.
A lot of your colleagues, particularly the more conservative colleagues in the House and the Senate, are in open revolt at the pace and process with which this bill is being considered. Are you one of those individuals?
I'm not in open revolt, but I am concerned about us not being able to get some of our conservative principles plugged into this legislation. So I'm with those folks on the policy side of this thing, but not on the revolutionary side.
What?
Now, okay, when he said conservative principles, he wants more stuff in there that's going to get rid of more people from having health care. Jesus.
Ask you this. I mean, did you feel that the Affordable Care Act was passed too quickly?
Well, we fought it for a long time, but in the end, it was jammed through us. And these are the words that I've long used, by hook, by crook, and by legislative shenanigan. And the Democrats will admit that I borrowed those words from them. But the considered analysis of the public is what we really need to have. It needed to happen then under Obamacare. It needs to happen now. And we shouldn't be in such a hurry that the public doesn't get a chance to weigh in, examine this, and make their recommendations.
Right. So the House version of that ACA bill was introduced by Nancy Pelosi in mid-July 2009. It got voted on the floor in November, so it was 6 months. Does 6 months seem like an adequate or more proper framework to go through hearings, have public airing of this?
Well, that seems like a plenty long time when we look back on that. I didn't realize it was 6 months before we got to that November 7th vote. I remember that exact date.
That's right.
But you know, if we had 4 or 5 weeks to work this thing through, that I think would be an appropriate amount of time. The country is much more attuned to health insurance policy than they were then. I don't know if it takes as long to examine these things. Plus, the public's experience, they know what they don't want, and yet I don't think we've come to a consensus on what they want.
Yeah, when you say we know what they don't want, what do you make of the fact that polling shows majority approval for the Affordable Care Act?
Oh gosh, I'd say that's a surprise to me, and I'm surprised because the other data that I've seen along the way, I haven't checked any most recently. I wouldn't think my colleagues would be as eager to repeal Obamacare if the polling showed people want to keep it. But I'm eager to repeal it, Chris. You know that.
Yeah, that's what's interesting, right? I mean, it is the case that this bill was unpopular for a long time. 45%, 40% support. It now is majority support, and 63% want to see it kept or expanded. expanded. You want to see it essentially repealed, done away with.
I want it all ripped out by the roots. I want to repeal every word of it. I wrote the repeal bill in the middle of the night, March 23rd, 2010. Those 40 words end with, "as if it had never been enacted," close quote. And that's the bill that I'd like to see go from the House, which it's passed in the past, over to the Senate and set it on Mitch McConnell's desk. So we start fresh. I said we have a bad foundation. We need to start fresh and rewrite this thing from a fresh start without being encumbered by some of the base work in Obamacare. And if there are good pieces of that, we can put them back in by consensus rather than try to save something.
How many?
You know, this guy doesn't have a clue on what he's talking about. If you make the Affordable Care Act disappear, you are more than likely going to affect well in excess of 200 million people in this country in some way or another, and the number's probably closer to 300 million people, okay? Just dealing with pre-existing conditions and your kids being on the policy until they're 26 years old. That in itself has to be somewhere in the vicinity, you know, of like 100 million people that are going to be somewhat or in some way affected, or at least have a family member that's affected. All right. But if the Affordable Care Act obviously didn't exist, you got 30 million people that magically would be without health insurance, period. This guy, he never thought about that, I guess, when he made that statement. But anyway, let me not get ticked off. Let me finish this.
How many people in your district are on the exchanges, Congressman?
I don't know that number. You may have that in front of you, Chris, but I don't know that number.
It's about 11,000 or so. Do you know what's going to happen to them under this replace bill? Have you talked to constituents, particularly in rural areas, who are going to be paying more out of pocket under this plan?
Well, of course, we don't have that data because first of all, we just got to look at this bill that's been offered. And I have a whole series of proposals that I think that we should do. But I will say, on balance, if the American people had to decide between continuing with Obamacare the way it is and trying to subsidize it and supplement it so it doesn't go under, or going back the way we were, I'd be for going back the way we were and then start the process of the reform of the existing healthcare system. And I think more people are better off that way.
All right, so obviously he wasn't paying attention to what Chris said earlier, that 63% of the American people prefer to keep the Affordable Care Act and to improve it. But if he was listening, he just told you that he don't give a damn about what they think. He wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act at all costs. I thought those calves the size of cantaloupes was a ridiculous comment, but this is even worse because obviously it's going to affect a lot more people.
Just want to get you on the record here. So you think the healthcare system before the Affordable Care Act, with no changes, just right back to that, is superior to the one we have now?
Absolutely, I believe that.
And let me ask you this.
And it left us a foundation where we can start to improve our healthcare and delivery system.
Let me ask you this. The bet that Steve Scalise and Paul Ryan and others in leadership are making is that everyone will roll over. They're going to basically make you walk the plank on this. They're not going to listen to anything you say. They're not going to take any changes. McCarthy was pretty clear about that today. They're going to make you vote for this bill, whether you like it or not. Are you going to vote for it?
Well, I'm going to lean no today, and I owe my constituents and everybody in this country my best effort and my best judgment. And I think that we have an opportunity to bring amendments to this legislation. They've got a ways to go before they can say they're close enough to have enough votes to, let's just say, make the pitch that it's the only train and it's leaving town. That's what I think we'll soon hear out of the Whips team. But here's this, that and we should not be advancing refundable tax credits. In the end, you're borrowing money from China and Saudi Arabia and the American people to put that money out front. We're better off to make everybody's premiums tax deductible. That's one.
Yeah, I just want to, final point here.
Okay, real quick. If you make everybody's premiums tax deductible, if poor people don't have the money to pay the premiums, what the hell good does making the premiums tax deductible do for them? There won't be any conservative.
On that, is it important to see what the scoring? You're talking about the deficit there, right? Deficit spending. Is it important to see what the CBO scoring is?
Well, that is important, yes, and but we know that the CBO scoring was way off on Obamacare, and so our confidence in CBO scoring isn't so great.
Yeah,
but we should get a sense of at least what they think.
Okay, and just in case you want to know, the CBO scoring wasn't that far off, but surprisingly, it was too conservative. The benefit from the Affordable Care Act was greater than they initially projected. So they erred on the side of conservatism, but of course, these guys aren't going to tell you that.
Representative Steve King, thank you for being with me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Joining me now, Republican Congressman Leonard Lance of New Jersey, member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, which advanced the health care bill this afternoon. Congressman.
Okay, now this is Congressman Lance from New Jersey. This guy should be a professional dance instructor because he danced and danced and danced throughout this entire interview on every question that would have basically nailed down the fact that the Republicans are trying to ramrod this thing through. Here's his portion.
And you're a yes on this bill, I take it?
I was a yes in committee today, based upon the bill as it exists today, and we've just completed a 27-hour marathon committee hearing.
Why are you rushing so fast?
I don't think we're rushing. It came out of Energy and Commerce, and
27-hour marathon committee hearing, okay, with obviously no witnesses, 27 straight hours. That's not rushing? Really?
out of Ways and Means, but now, Chris, it goes to the Budget Committee, and it has to go through the Budget Committee, and then the Rules Committee, and then, of course, it's put on the floor, and whatever we do then goes to the Senate.
Right. How many hearings, open hearings with witness testimony and the like, have you had on this bill?
We've had a series of hearings over the last several years on the Affordable Care Act.
No.
Okay, that's dance number one. Here comes dance number two.
This Congress, though, how many hearings in this Congress on this bill?
We have gone to the American people with Paul Ryan's Better Way, and we campaigned on the fact that we were going to improve the system,
no,
and
I
think that's what we've done.
Okay, now here comes dance number three. I think that he's going to finally give up the ghost, but I could be wrong.
Right, no, I get that, but there's legislative language now. I'm just curious, how many hearings has your committee had on this bill?
We had a 27-hour marathon session, and I think all of the issues were vetted, and I was very proud of the committee in our bipartisan capacity.
The one that went through the night, but how many hearings with witnesses called to offer their expert testimony, whether that's doctors, people from the insurance industry, other folks, how many hearings has your committee had on this bill?
We've had a series of hearings over the last several years.
Okay, that's 4 dances already, and he still hasn't finished the song.
On the issue, and we campaigned, Chris, on this matter over the course of the election cycle.
In this Congress, I'm sorry, I don't want to belabor this, but in this Congress, is my understanding, in this Congress on this legislation, there have been 0 hearings, but for the 27-hour marathon markup that went through the night. Is that correct?
And also the marathon in the Ways and Means Committee, and also the fact that we have explained our position, and it was completely transparent over the course of the 27 hours, and
Yeah, it was transparent over the 27 hours, but there was no public comment. There were no witnesses pro or con. How the hell do you call that transparent other than transparent amongst yourselves? Because the damn sure wasn't transparent to the public.
I thought it was an excellent discussion on both the Republican and the Democratic side.
Congressman, you're talking about a fifth of the American economy. You're talking about maybe 15 million people losing health insurance, and you're saying that 27 hours going through the night is sufficient.
I think that we have to move forward. I suspect that when it gets to the Senate, there will be a discussion there. But I do think the American people, Chris, want us to reform Obamacare, and I am committed to doing that.
How many people in your district are on the exchanges?
I would say roughly 5,000 or so, Chris.
My understanding from Kaiser Family Foundation is it's as much as 4 times that. I think it's much more like 20,000. Have you talked to them about what would happen to them, particularly, say, a 60-year-old who makes $20,000 to $40,000 who could be looking at $7,000 to $9,000 more out of pocket?
Yes, I've had a series of town hall meetings, as I'm sure you are aware. At one town hall meeting, we had 1,400 people, and then at a second town hall meeting, we had 900 people. And so, yes, I've tried to discuss these matters with constituents in the district.
Yes, and this is genuinely commendable. We've lauded for you on it for this program. Many of your colleagues did not. Those town halls happened before the bill legislation was introduced. Am I correct?
Certainly, we had our principles, but yes, it was before. Yes, it was before the bill was introduced.
So, if I were in your district, say, and I were on the exchange and 60 years old and making $20,000 and saw that my out-of-pocket costs were going to go up by $7,000, I didn't know that when you had the town halls. Now that the bill actually exists, I do know that. Do you see why it might be important to have hearings or some exchange with constituents on that fact?
I certainly have a series of exchanges with constituents and will continue to do so. And I hope that we are improving the system because the system needs improving. So many of my constituents have come into our offices in New Jersey indicating that it's unaffordable for them under their health care plans, and that their deductibles have increased dramatically, right. Their co-pays have increased dramatically, and I think we can do a better job, and I think this is a step in the right direction.
So is that the benchmark for you? Because it seems to me that I hear that problem identified by members of Congress across the aisle, right? High deductibles, high co-pays, premiums going up, right? That's the main complaint. The question then
that is one of the complaints.
Is that the benchmark by which the solution should be judged? Which is to say, are you saying your constituent, we will bring those costs down, and can you look them in the eyes and promise that will happen?
I certainly believe that is the goal, and I certainly think we have to improve the system that exists now, because the system that exists now has really been so difficult for those who have been under health care coverage through their employment, and their deductibles have increased dramatically, their co-pays have increased dramatically, and I think we have to do a better job. I also think, Chris, that we should maintain portions of what occurred.
Okay, I'll take that as a no. And now he's going to mention the good parts about the Affordable Care Act, because people tend to remember the last things that a person says, especially when they get long-winded, instead of the first things that they say, unless they are specifically focused on the first things that somebody basically speaks on.
Under Obamacare, pre-existing conditions, for example, young people on their parents' policies into their 26.
Okay. I forgot to mention on that pre-existing conditions that they claim is going to be unaffected. That's a lie. Okay. On pre-existing conditions, if you have not or you had a lapse of insurance, let's say you were unemployed for 63 days. Or let's say you didn't have any insurance and then decided, that you needed insurance because you had an issue. Well, the pre-existing condition portion of the AHCA calls for the insurance companies not to deny you the right to purchase insurance, but they can charge you a significantly higher rate, and on top of which they can charge you an additional 30% premium on your annual policy. Translation, they're going to basically price you out of the market as far as being able to afford to go in and get that insurance based on your pre-existing condition. So they're talking out of both sides of their mouths as far as them claiming that they're keeping the pre-existing condition in place.
I have argued internally that we should, at least to some extent, continue the Medicaid enhancement.
I want to ask you about that Medicaid enhancement. Final question for you. You have hospitals in your district, I imagine?
Yes, of course.
Okay. What will be the effect on those hospitals and about the folks who are dependent on Medicaid when the Medicaid expansion is phased out?
The Medicaid expansion is not being phased out. It's that the percentage that will be paid by the federal government will be at the regular Medicaid match.
Right, but they're going to cut off new enrollees, which is ultimately going to sort of set it on a glide path to zero.
States will have the ability to continue with new enrollees so long as the match will be at the regular match, not at the enhanced match.
Right.
I would prefer the enhanced match.
What is the effect going to be for the hospitals and for the poor folks in your district who depend on Medicaid?
I think that they will be able to continue to have Medicaid because I believe that New Jersey will continue the program. New Jersey is one of those states, of course, that expanded Medicaid, and I hope and expect that that will continue to be the case. And privately within my caucus, I have indicated that I think that there should be a continuation of Medicaid expansion, and that was contained in our bill today.
So he's depending on the goodwill of his individual state in order for people to be able to stay on Medicare, okay? But as we all know, and this guy is sitting there pulling our chain, New Jersey has a budget problem. So if you're going to depend on them and their goodwill in order to supply money for people to stay on Medicare, where they are running budget deficits, you are flipping dreaming. And more than that, you're just straight out lying because you know damn well that they are not going to front money for people to stay on Medicare when they have shortfalls all over the place within their budgets. It's just not going to happen.
To roll the dice. Congressman Leonard Lance, I appreciate it as always. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, so, and this guy damn sure is not going to be scheduling any townhouses until after this bill makes it all the way through. And even then, he may want to come back into town with a trench coat, sunglasses, and a hat so that he's not recognized. Now, remember those death spiral comments made by Paul Ryan and a whole bunch of other people? I decided to add this on since the video's not that long so that you could see that Paul Ryan and the rest of these guys are pulling our chain. They're taking one comment made by the head of Aetna, who was trying to leverage his position in trying to get a merger through with another insurance company. So he basically was trying to be proactive by claiming something that absolutely wasn't true. Here's the clip that supports that particular statement.
So there isn't enough money in the ACA today as it's structured, even with its fees and taxes, to support the population that needs to be served.
So that says to me, what you're saying there is Obamacare functionally is dead because financially it's not sustainable.
It is in a death spiral.
The CEO of Aetna on February 15th saying Obamacare was in a death spiral. And that was welcome news for Republicans who want to kill Obamacare and who jumped on the death spiral talking point.
The CEO of Aetna, another large insurance carrier, said that Obamacare is in a death spiral. His words.
The CEO of Aetna said it's in a death spiral. Those aren't our words, those are his words.
The head of Aetna says we're in a death spiral.
The CEO of Aetna said that Obamacare is in a death spiral. The CEO of Aetna said it's in a death spiral.
Obamacare is in a death spiral. It is not getting any better, it's getting worse. That's the CEO of one of America's leading health insurance companies, Aetna, said this just a couple weeks ago.
Here is what they are not telling you, which is that the context in which the Aetna CEO said that. You see, Aetna had been trying to merge with rival Humana, and they threatened to pull out of the exchanges if the Obama Justice Department did not approve the merger. Don't take my word for it. A federal judge, in blocking that merger, pointed out Aetna's actions and its motives. I quote here. Aetna tried to leverage its participation in the exchanges for favorable treatment from DOJ regarding the proposed merger. At Aetna CEO Bertolini's deposition, Aetna's counsel stated that if Aetna was not, quote, happy with the results of an upcoming meeting regarding the merger, we're just going to pull out all of the exchanges. The judge even pointed to a smoking gun letter from Aetna's CEO to the Justice Department Antitrust Division. Quoting the Aetna CEO, "We believe it is very likely we would need to leave the public exchange business entirely and plan for additional business efficiencies should our deal ultimately be blocked." Now, it's also true Aetna had been losing money in the new exchanges, but it must have been expecting that to change. As late as July 19, 2016, the company was still planning to expand its footprint to as many as 20 states. But after the Justice Department sued Aetna to block the merger with Humana, Aetna announced it would cut its participation in the exchanges from 15 states down to 4. And that's when its CEO subsequently unleashed the death spiral remark. Joining now, Congresswoman Karen Bass of California. And Congresswoman, your colleagues across the aisle have been making a lot of the death spiral. They've quoted the Aetna CEO particularly. They keep saying that Obamacare is collapsing. What is your response to that?
Well, you know, especially coming from the state of California, which is one of the reasons why Obamacare has been successful nationwide, because California, the population is so large. I just think that that is the fear-mongering that they are using to justify what they're getting ready to do, which is potentially cut 15 million people off of health care coverage. I don't believe there's a death spiral. I don't believe that it's getting ready to collapse. That's certainly not the case in California.
I mean, you're a congressperson, and you're going to have to vote on this at some point. I mean, do you have insurance company lobbyists, for instance, coming to you saying, this is in a death spiral, it's exploding, you need to bail us out, you need to do something?
No, I don't. You know, the insurance companies have not been lobbying us. I mean, this has been a big win for the insurance companies. Requiring everybody to have insurance coverage, you know, it's definitely been a big win. You know, in California, we certainly attempted to pass a couple of ballot measures that would give our insurance commissioner more control over keeping the premiums lower, but the insurance companies put in tens of millions of dollars and defeated those initiatives. So a lot of the problems that people say are because of Obamacare, they're not necessarily because of the Affordable Care Act. It's because there's not enough control on the insurance companies themselves.
So how long have you been in Congress, Congresswoman?
I'm in my 7th year now, and I have voted over 60 times against the repeal.
So let me ask you this. You're seventh year now. Have you ever seen a piece of legislation of this magnitude and import being moved this quickly in your congressional career?
No, absolutely not. And ironically, isn't this the same thing the Republicans accused the Democrats of doing the year before I got here? You know, we are voting on this bill, and it hasn't even been scored by the CBO. Now, we're expecting the CBO score in the next couple of days, but right now, we believe the CBO is going to show that about 15 million people will lose their coverage.
Do you think there is any way to stop this in the House? I mean, it is sort of remarkable to watch leadership go to work, and I've spoken to some of your Republican colleagues, obviously, to basically ram this through. What are your options in the minority there?
Well, hopefully that there will be enough Republicans that refuse to vote for it. You know, there weren't enough in committees, but listening to my colleagues that are in those committees, I heard that the Speaker himself personally had to come to the committee and twist some arms. So I don't know if they have the capacity to twist as many arms as would be needed to pass it off the floor, but we'll certainly see.
One of the arguments that your colleagues are making across the aisle, Republicans, is that Paul Ryan called this an act of mercy. I mean, his argument is the whole thing's floundering, it's imploding. What we're doing is going to be best for people, and in fact, we're doing this to look out for the least of these in biblical terms.
Yeah, and it's absolutely not the case, because it's going to be the least of these who lose coverage, especially people who come from expensive states like California, like Los Angeles or San Francisco. So older people, low income, who live in high income areas are definitely going to be the losers. And, you know, much respect for the Speaker, but this is the person who wants to, in my opinion, take Medicare and turn it into vouchers. This is going to be an extremely deep cut to Medicare, and so the consequences of this, I think, are going to be very severe. It's going to remind me back to the days when I worked in the emergency room in Los Angeles County, when people would come into the emergency room extremely ill, and that, ironically, of course, is what costs so much money when people come in ill.
All right, Congresswoman Karen Bass, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
All right, so 2 Republicans, 1 Democrat, one Tea Party guy against it, one, I guess, conservative who is basically just going to dance to the tune. And then you got, obviously, the Democratic Congresswoman who basically is telling you which way the wind's blowing, particularly based on the state of California perspective. This is just nuts.